Long before America became the world's military superpower, its rise began at sea. In this episode, we explore how steam, steel, and naval strength shaped the global role of the United States and helped set the stage for World War I.
Subscribe to Shadow Force for focused, deep dives into U.S. military history, global warfare, and the evolution of military power. Let's uncover how America first stepped onto the world stage.
In the early 1800s, the world's oceans were dominated by massive wooden sailing ships. But by the middle of the century, a major change was underway: the shift from sail to steam power, and from wood to iron and steel. This transition changed everything. Warships could now move without wind, carry more firepower, and operate for longer periods. Steamships began replacing traditional vessels in every major navy. In the United States, the Civil War was a turning point. The 1862 clash between the USS Monitor and the Confederate CSS Virginia marked the first battle between ironclads and showed the world that naval warfare had entered a new era. The United States, though still focused mostly on internal development, had begun to understand the power of industrialized war at sea. After the Civil War, the U.S. Navy went into decline. Budget cuts and national focus on westward expansion kept American naval power limited. By the 1880s, the U.S. Navy ranked far behind those of Britain, France, and even smaller nations like Italy. But that began to change in the 1890s. American thinkers like Alfred Thayer Mahan, a naval officer and historian, argued that sea power was essential for national greatness. His book, The Influence of Sea Power Upon History, became widely influential, not just in the U.S., but across Europe and Japan. Mahan believed that powerful navies determined the fate of empires. He pushed for a modern fleet, overseas bases, and control of critical sea routes. His ideas would guide U.S. naval strategy for decades. By the end of the 19th century, the U.S. was changing. In 1898, the Spanish-American War marked America's arrival as a global military power. The U.S. Navy crushed the Spanish fleet in both the Philippines and Cuba, using modern steel ships and coordinated naval tactics. This victory gave the U.S. new territories, including the Philippines, Guam, and Puerto Rico, and solidified control over Hawaii and future access to the Panama Canal Zone. Now the U.S. needed a navy that could protect these holdings, not just a coastal defense force, but a blue water navy able to operate around the world. Presidents like Theodore Roosevelt made this a priority. Roosevelt famously said, "Speak softly and carry a big stick," and for him, the big stick was a powerful fleet. In 1907, the U.S. made a global statement. President Roosevelt sent 16 American battleships, painted white with gold trim, on a tour around the world. This became known as the Great White Fleet. The mission was diplomatic, but its purpose was clear: to show the world that the United States had arrived as a naval power. The fleet visited ports in Latin America, Asia, and Europe. In Japan especially, the visit sent a strong message that America would defend its growing interests in the Pacific. The journey lasted over a year. It wasn't just a public relations move. It was a real demonstration of America's new ability to project power across the globe. As tensions rose in Europe in the early 1900s, the United States was not directly involved, but it was watching closely. European nations, especially Britain and Germany, were locked in a naval arms race, building bigger and more powerful dreadnought battleships. The U.S., while not involved in European alliances, was preparing for the possibility of global conflict. Congress funded more ships, naval shipyards expanded, and military planners began to think beyond coastal defense. They developed War Plan Orange for a potential conflict with Japan, and War Plan Black for a possible war with Germany. By 1914, the United States had the third largest navy in the world, behind only Britain and Germany. It was no longer just defending its shores, it was preparing to shape global events. When World War I broke out in 1914, the U.S. stayed neutral, at least officially. But America's Navy played a key role behind the scenes. U.S. warships protected trade routes, escorted shipping, and kept watch over the Atlantic. Meanwhile, American industry began fueling the Allied war effort. Factories in New York, Chicago, and Detroit produced weapons, ammunition, and supplies for Britain and France. The U.S. Navy helped move these supplies safely across submarine-infested waters. The German use of unrestricted submarine warfare, especially the sinking of civilian ships like the Lusitania, would eventually push America into the war. But even before the official entry in 1917, the U.S. Navy was becoming a global force for logistics, deterrence, and power projection. By 1916, the United States was walking a tightrope, committed to peace but preparing for war. Military recruitment expanded, shipbuilding accelerated, naval bases in the Atlantic and Pacific were fortified. When the U.S. finally entered World War I in 1917, its Navy played a crucial role, convoying troops and equipment to Europe, countering German U-boats, supporting Allied operations with fresh manpower and industrial power. America had crossed a threshold, from rising power to global actor. And it all began with steamships, steel hulls, and a belief in the power of sea control. The rise of the U.S. Navy before World War I wasn't just about ships. It was about identity. It marked the beginning of America's transformation from an isolated republic to a world superpower. And in the fires of World War I, that transformation would be tested on a global scale. Like and subscribe to Shadow Force. We explore the rise of American military power, war by war, weapon by weapon. Next episode, how the First World War began and why the U.S. would join the fight. If you believe military history shaped our world, then you've already joined the force. Hit like, subscribe, and share the mission. Shadow Force continues, and the next chapter awaits.